honestly, like, God, don't let me die. Please don't let me die.
Are you ready?
Lord, the anxiety starts setting. No, I feel like a cramping in my belly. I mean, I say, oh God, oh, I never noticed that like a cramping there before. And she asked me, whatever, are you feeling like I started after that, I started feeling a little pain, like a little, a little thing. So I was like, all right, fine. Husband in a panic, but he was um you know a little bit more anxious. So she said, yes, you're gonna have to go home to get her things and so on. As I said, we walked there, so I'm gonna have to walk back and then walk come back, right? So um I'm sitting on the bed. The bed, of course, it has those things that you bring up, the railings and so on. It has the wheel, of course, but because it's stationary, or it stays there in the office, it's not pulled up for it to move or anything. So of course, no, I can't get off the bed, so they'll have to move me on the bed. They'll have to move the bed with me to bring me upstairs. So my dress is pulled all the way up, of course, and I'm there. This water still gushing. I had no idea it was that much water, because I'm saying that amount of water that came out, by the time he reach up, no water, my pin didn't have no water around him. But apparently, it was fine and so on. Um I'm sitting there and I'm feeling a little bit of cramping now and again. Feel like contractions, what people tell me about. So I'm thinking, oh, doctor, is a little cramping. So she looking at me and she's like, are you feeling contractions? And I'm like, I don't know. I think so, or maybe it's just a little cramping. She said, okay, maybe it's contractions. Tell me when you feel one again. So felt one again, and I told her, yeah, it's one a little bit, not much. Mind you, in the back of my head, I'm so excited, because I'm like, I am this many dilated, girl, this many, 4 centimeters dilated, and my contraction is like, not really feeling anything. So I'm like, oh, that delivery thing, I probably not go too bad, right? Because I only need 6 more to go for me ready. So 10 centimeters, yes, because I should be 10 centimeters. So me I say, not go too bad. All right, fine. um Sat there, took a moment to myself, and I was just telling God, thank you, because you're flupu, what I said I wanted. I said, get me to 1 or 2 centimeters. When it's time to see the doctor, you double that, right? You double the 2. And on top of that, water break, baby ready, can't go home, because of course you're at risk of infection and so on. And so, all right, so I'm now escorted to the ward. I go up. I'm given my room and all of that. My husband still isn't back as yet. And no, I'm starting to worry, because the nurse is now saying to me, remember, your husband can't come up anymore because it's COVID. And I get emotional, and the tears start running down my face, and I'm like, so this is me now, and I didn't even get to kiss my husband later, or goodbye, that's it. So the nurse was like, yes, I sympathize with you, but COVID and so on. And girl, just in her feelings, like me just in my feelings. And I couldn't help but just get overwhelmed. I was just emotional. Another nurse came in, and she's like, listen to me, drop all pride we might have, because when women are give birth and so on, no time for pride and feel ashamed or no type of way. So I'm like, okay, fine. Changed into my gown. husband brings my things, the security brings them up because he cannot come up. He calls me, we're on the phone, we're talking, he's checking how I'm feeling, all of that. I'm telling him, look, I'm emotional because I wish you were here, all of this and so on. Still have my mask on and all of that because it's the middle of COVID and there were a lot of cases on that island at that time. And then my nurse came to inform me that I would have to do a COVID test. So I'm like, all right, fine. I did one before, it wasn't bad. So, I'll do this one too because I have to anyway. Pain was getting more intense, but it wasn't so intense, like I said, as people explain. So I didn't feel like, oh, whatever. I was strapped up to a machine where I could see my contractions as well. And they could also monitor the baby's heartbeat as well. So I could see everything. It was right next to my bed. And they took the monitor off after, I think, half an hour and so on. After they've realized that everything is normal, the baby's heartbeat, is normal and so on. So that's it. I got up, went to the bathroom. I asked one of the nurse for one of the pads so that I could do some squats. Yes, I was that serious about that baby coming. So I was like, all right, let me do some squats to try to help me, all of that. So bring the baby down. I've read that, if you try to exercise and so on, there was no exercise ball like you would read on YouTube, like you would see on YouTube and so on. There was nothing like that in the hospital. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do some squats. So I would do some squats. The nurse came in and she was like, careful, you can still do them, but just be careful, don't overdo it. And I'm like, okay. My husband was telling me the same thing on the phone, don't overdo it. So I did some squats, then I went back to bed. Night, no, change nurse, different nurse come. Still no baby, still no intense contract. Like I could feel the contractions. It was more painful, but I could have hold it. Girl could have hold it. Alright, so for some reason the video has gotten darker. I think because the evening it's getting to evening now. So I think the sun has moved and so on. And have a new nurse now, having more contractions and so on. So I know that nurse because she was one of the midwives that had dealt with me when I was in the hospital previously. So she came in and she had to strap me up again, to check the babies, to monitor the baby's heartbeat and all of that, and my contractions. So she was asking me about my contractions and I was telling her, yes, they've gotten more intense, but they're manageable. So she has strapped me to the machine now, and I've realized that every so often it's starting to beep. Mostly when I'm having a contraction. So it's beeping now. So the baby's heartbeat is either dropping very, very low, or it's going really, really fast. It's getting very, very high. And then the machine is now beeping that there's a problem. So I've brought it to her concern now. I've brought it to her attention, and she's like, yeah, let me observe it some more before I decide to call the doctor. So I'm there again. She's like, sometimes the machines will do that and so on. So I'm not very concerned. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'm concerned though. So, of course, again, the machine is beeping. Again, ever so often it's beeping. So I'm calling her. I'm pressing because I can't press off the machine either. So I'm calling her now to let her know the machine is beeping. It keeps beeping. The baby's heartbeat is dropping very, very, way, way down. Or I'm realizing that it's going very, very high. And then the machine is picking that up and it's beeping. And I'm having contractions as well. So at this point, I'm not seeing a connection between that happening with the machine and my contractions. I just know I'm having contractions. Right, so I just know I'm having contractions. So she keeps telling me I'm not concerned, but if you're concerned, if you want me to call the doctor, I can call the doctor, all of that. But if I call the doctor, then you may have to do a C-section and so on. So at this point she is annoyed, right? And I'm frustrated because she's annoyed that I'm telling her, right, that this is my concern. right? The machine is beeping and I'm concerned. I've come this far with this baby. I've gone through so much and I've come this far. And I'm concerned that something might be wrong, right? So, she's almost like she's trying to frighten me now to say, well, if it is that she calls the doctor or whatever, then, I might. And she wasn't mean with it or anything, right? She was just letting me know. She was just straightforward, right, with it. And I was like, okay, fine. So then the machine keeps beeping, the baby's heartbeat keeps dropping way down, or it's going very high. So now she's looking at the paper now and she's realizing there's a collision with when my contractions are high, when I'm in my contractions, and also the baby's heartbeat. So they are matching up now that when I'm having my contraction, the baby's heartbeat, that's when the baby's heartbeat is either dropping or going very high. So now my contractions are affecting the baby's heartbeat. It's affecting the baby. And so she tells me, look, I'm going to have to call the doctor because it seems as if the baby cannot manage your contractions. Me never hear this in my life. I never knew that contractions could affect babies. And so I'm like, oh my God, here's another thing. Here's another hurdle. And so she tells me, okay, I'm going to have to call the doctor. I'm like, okay, fine, no problem. She comes back with some socks. I know those socks because I had to wear them. They help you not to have blood clots or anything like that, right? I don't remember what they're called, like pressure socks or something like that. Some long socks. And then she also comes back with like a little tray thing with razor and so on. So she's like, look, I don't know what doc is going to do when she comes back, but I want to be prepared. So I'm like, okay, prepared for what you said. You might have to do a surgery, you might have to do a C-section to get the baby out. So I just want to be prepared. So even though I'm going to be shaving your belly area there, it might not be that you're going to, but if doc comes back, I want to be prepared so that you can go right away to surgery. What? Hold on a minute. When I tell you that I have never been more scared in my life. I wasn't anxious anymore. I don't know how to describe it. I was so scared because my worst nightmare was coming true. I might have to do a C-section, and she's telling me she wants me to be prepared because when doc comes, more than likely that's what doc is going to want me to do. And I'm like, God, please, at this point, please let, when this woman checks me, I am further dilated and almost to 10, right? And this was like after 8. At this point, it was like after 8, yeah, after 8 at night. And I was like, was it after 8? After 8 or after 7, right? So she shaves and I'm so emotional and I'm crying and so on. And I call my husband, of course. I have to call him and I'm telling him, look, the doctor says I might have to do it. The nurse says I might have to do a C-section. I'm waiting for the doctor. Like, I am emotional. Like, I am torn up because I didn't read up about anything about C-section because I never prepared to do any C-section. Nothing, because I didn't want to jinx myself. I wanted nothing to do with C-sections. I looked for nothing about C-section at all. And he's like, calm down. When the doctor comes, I understand. Don't get too stressed. You can't be crying so much. Remember the baby. You want to be all right, whatever. So the doctor comes and she checks the paper and she's like, yes, I can see, what kind of contractions are you having? Because these contractions don't look very high. And I'm like, I'm having contractions, but they're not very, very painful. They're painful, but they, I can manage them. They're manageable, And she's like, well, these contractions don't even seem that high anyway. So she realizes, of course, while she's there, the baby's heart beat drops really low, and so on. And then I have another contraction and it goes very high and so on. So she's like, something's not right. Let me check you, see how far you are dilated. She checks. Girl, still 4 centimeters, this many centimeters. And I'm like, how is that possible? After 2 in the afternoon is when my water broke, and I was 4. How is it that hours later I'm still stuck at 4, right? And she says, you know, based on this information, I think you're going to have to do a C-section. And I bust out bawling. I was not like, not like that. I couldn't contain it. Like, I couldn't hold I was just crying tears. And she was like, I understand, but everything's gonna be okay. I've done a lot of C-sections before. No one has complained about anything. Everything's going to be normal. This is what's going to happen. And she starts explaining to me, there are 2 ways. We can either put you to sleep completely, or we can just inject you. I don't know what the anesthesiologist is going to decide to do, but it's one of the two. They will decide when you get to the theater, if they want to put you to sleep completely, or if they'll just do half of you. So half of your body will be numb, which is down there, and then they'll just, I'll do the surgery and I'll take the baby out and so on and stitch you up and all of that, and you'll be fine. Make sure your organs are, rearranged and whatever. And at this point, there was no point in arguing. There was no point in trying to wait or anything like that. And I was like, you know what, whatever it is, it's best. And I'm just crying. And she says, okay, nurse is going to prep you further and so on, and then I'm going to call the anesthesiologist now to see if they can accommodate us now and all of that. Very calm doctor, very nice lady. Doesn't smile a lot, but she was very nice. And I called my husband, of course, and I told him, this is the decision they've made. I'm gonna have to have a C-section. It's just us. That's just how it's going to be. They're gonna cut me open. I don't know if I'm going to be completely asleep as yet, or if it's just going to be half of me that's numb or anything. I don't know as yet. So I don't have any information to give you as it relates to that. If you can call me after the surgery, all of that. I asked the doctor how long. She said the surgery was going to be about, I think she said it was about 20 minutes to half an hour. I want to say that she said that the actual cutting, like going through, she said would have been, and so on. And I was like, okay, fine. So I'm estimating like an hour or so on, and all of that. Because she said about 20 minutes or 30 minutes to get the baby out. And I said, okay. Talked to my husband. The nurse came. She wasn't very open to me being on the phone and so on, while everything was going on. She kind of old school. She's a very old school. I realized she's very old school with a lot of things. And so I told him, okay, I'll tell you when I'm going to surgery, and I'll also tell you, when I'm back, if it is that, whatever it is. So it's time for me to go to surgery. I'm all prepped. I've stopped crying, and I'm just talking to God, and I'm like, honestly, like, God, don't let me die. Please don't let me die. And that was it was a huge wake-up call for me. And it was, as I said, it was the scariest time of my life I can recall. And I was like, I don't want to die. I want to meet my baby. And we did this. I went down, and the doctor, he was asking me some questions, and he was like, I'm going to inject you here and here, and I'm not going to put you to sleep completely. And I was so relieved. I'm just going to make half of you know him and so on. And the nurse was there with me and she held me, and I was having contractions. So, he was there every step of the way. Like, he was like, if you're having a contraction, tell me, I'll stop. I won't do anything until it passes, to make sure you're very still. All of that. He was just explaining to me. And one of the most amazing thing happened while I was on the table, and my doctor was, cutting and pushing, and there was pressure and a lot of moving around. And I was so scared. And he came over and he said, do you want me to hold your hand? And it was the most amazing thing to me, because I never knew doctors were that empathetic. Like, I never, like, and this is a man, like, he isn't, I don't even know which country he's from, but yeah, he's also one of those doctors who's not very smiley or anything. He was just very straightforward. He was just giving me all the information I needed, when he saw me, when he met me, and he was, do you have any questions? Do you have any concerns that you want to ask me before? No. Okay, fine, nothing. And he would do his injections and so on or whatever. But when he came and he asked me, and because I was so cold as well, and the nurse was there still, but on one side, and I said yes, and he held my hand the entire time, right? And then when the baby was out, the pediatrician came and she showed me the baby, and I didn't even get to look at him for very long. I saw him, I turned my head and I saw him, and I was emotional. And I was wishing he would just stay there with me, but she just showed him to me, and then she said, we're gonna go get him cleaned off, and we're gonna bring him to the ward, and keep getting warm and getting checked out and everything, and when you go up, he should be ready for you. And I said okay. And he came at 10:37 that night. And so now it's time to stitch me up and get me ready. And I was like, oh, please just hurry up and get this out of the way so I can go see my baby. And I was all stitched up, ready to go back to the ward. And I went up, and the baby wasn't there. And the nurse came in and she checked on me and whatever, and I was like, the baby? And she's like, he's okay, don't worry about him, he's fine. And I'm like, what? The same nurse, the same old school. She's like, don't worry, he's fine. I'll bring him to you soon. I'll bring him to you soon enough. And I'm like, okay, all right. And I was there, and I called my husband. I was able to call my husband and tell him that I'm back from surgery, everything went well, I saw the baby. I haven't seen him again since, as yet. The nurse hasn't brought him back as yet, but and then they brought me my baby, and I saw him and I melted, and he was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in my life. I had never seen something so beautiful in my life. Like, my heartstring never pulled so much. And I looked at him and I realized that he looked like my father, and like a baby version of my father. And I was just excited, and I called my husband, video called him, showed him the baby. We had our moment, he had his moment, and so on. Then the nurse came in and put the baby, trying to get the baby to latch on my breast. I never had any problem with him latching or anything like that. And yeah, bonded with him, and I had him the whole night. And yeah, of course my feet were still numb and everything, so I couldn't get up. So I still had a tube. I had to have a tube. So that was one of the preparations that she made before I went into surgery. So I had to have a tube put in, so I couldn't move or anything. My lower half just up here, so the baby was right next to me as well. And then at one point he slept on the bed with me, like right next to me, and there was no way I was going to be turning anyway. So it was pretty awesome. It was pretty good. My experience was very good. Apart from that, I was scared to death. And then it happened, and I was like, oh, that's it. And um yeah, so I had my stitches and all of that, so I had to be very careful. And I remember the next day when I just started getting feeling back in my legs and so on, like the afternoon, the nurse was saying to me, the longer you take to get up, the longer you take to go home. And I was like, no, 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 I want to see my husband, and I want my husband to see his son, and all of that. And I fought myself to get up off that bed. I struggled so much, but I was so adamant that I was getting up. And because of that, I only spent like a day and a half, 2 days in the hospital. Yeah. Rather than the recommended 3 days, 3.5 days. Yeah. And um yeah, we went home. Everything was fine. The doctors checked him out. He was healthy. He was fine. Um, Mommy was fine. I was good. And we checked out. And yeah, that is my labor and delivery story. Unexpected turn of events. um, the whole pregnancy took a whole lot of unexpected turns, but in the end, as cliched as it sounds, it really, really was worth it in the end. Like, when I say it was worth it, it really was worth it in the end. Um, my beautiful baby boy was healthy. I was healthy. Um, I was able to walk about after surgery, days after. I mean, my husband was with me every step of the way. Like, for people who have to do it alone, I'm so sorry. I wish you didn't have to do it alone. And I know that people say, oh, it made me stronger and so on. But nobody ever wants to go through something so traumatic alone. Nobody ever plans to do this thing alone, you know? You want somebody there to rub your feet, to rub your back, to tell you it's going to be okay, tell you, okay, it's okay to be moody, say, oh, you want me to fix you something? Do you want me to go get you something? And then the whole, after the whole traumatic stress of labor, you want somebody there with you to hold your hand, to, go through all the emotions with you. And so I have a newfound, like, I've always respected women because I knew that labor and delivery was never an easy thing, but I have a newfound respect for those women who have done it, have gone through. And I pray that every single person who wants to get pregnant and wants to experience that, I pray that they will get the chance to experience it, no matter how old they are. Like, it's an amazing journey. Like, in the midst of it, sometimes it doesn't feel so amazing, but I pray that every woman who wants to be a mother will get to experience it. And, you know even if it's a rough one, even for those who are pregnant now, I pray over you and I pray over your baby that even if it's a rough journey, that in the end you'll be able to see your baby. You'll both get to see each other, and that it will be a successful labor and delivery, you know and I'm just so grateful. I cannot big up my husband enough for everything. Like, I don't know. I always say this. God, when God was making him, he had me in mind specifically. He really had me in mind, because the man is just a good man. Like, he is an amazing man, husband, father, everything. But before all else, husband, like the man is a good man, and I really, really appreciate him. I couldn't have done this thing. I mean, I'm sure I could have, but this journey called life, And then this new journey called motherhood is an amazing one because he's by my side, and I'm just so grateful for that. So big up to me, nice clean husband. And shout out to all my friends who were there with me every step of the way, even when I was moody and I had my walls up and so on. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I know this is a long video and I perhaps had to cut it in two, but I'm so grateful for your continued support, continued love. And if you have not already subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Go ahead and like this video and share it like food, like Wayne Marshall say. All right, peace, see you soon.
Hooray!